and the four-way test of the things we did.
If the prayers of all concerned, will avail goodwill and beneficence, will be beneficial to all concerned.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Adrian, would you like to introduce our guest?
And happy summer! And we're excited to have Lindsay Senslin from Resilience 1220. There she is. And also Cindy Lindsay. So welcome. And Janine Payton. Over here. Gotcha from,
Okay. All right, I didn't do an inspiration quote this year. I wanted to do this week. I wanted to do a gratitude quote, and I found this one. And I looked, and I could not. Nobody seems to know who said it, but it says, "This year has reminded me that leadership isn't about titles or tasks. It's about the quiet joy of serving others and the deep gratitude that comes from working alongside people who care just as deeply." And I can't thank this club enough for supporting me this year and for working alongside me. So thank you to every single one of you. Not my intention. Thank you. So I actually got out and was social the last week, which is kind of a crazy concept. Ran into Sue Brown at Denver Center for the Performing Arts, and Erica, Katie, and I ran into each other at Lazy Butcher, Cowboy Lounge. Changes names too often, so. There you are. You're not here, you still tell. You want to? Oh, okay. I got your mouthful. Hang on. The water here. Okay. So Judy and I just wanted to take a second and tell you about the experience of going to the Rose Parade and Rose Bowl with Rotary. District 5450 is putting a group together this year to go help decorate the float and go to the parade and go to the football game if you want. Judy and I went last year and just wanted to tell you a little bit about it because the emails to the district don't make it sound like it's very much fun. And I can tell you it is.
it was very fun. Yeah, we had a great time. And so, Denise put together a couple of photos to show you what we were working on. So everybody has an 8-hour shift and you go and you do what you're told to do, basically. But it was amazing because we learned so lot, or at least I did, about how every single square millimeter has to be covered with something organic. And then when it's finished, it's just absolutely amazing. So it's not just flowers, it's seeds and powder and lots of other things that you have to apply. And so you could see in the earlier pictures what we were doing, and then this is the end result. You got to see so many people, meet so many people, work hard, but have fun, and it was just awesome.
We were Judy and I worked on the cow a lot. First of all, I will tell you, you end up with more glue on you than you've ever worn in your entire life. But the cow, the black is actually onion seed that you were applying, and the white was brown
Rice.
Yeah,
brown rice.
so it was like a rice powder. So you could paint the float. The float was already, the structure was already built, but you would put paint glue on it and then apply the organic matter, whatever it was. The Rotary logo, which they had covered in a tarp because it was at the bottom and they decorated it first and they were trying to keep other stuff from falling on it, was completely covered in yellow and white lentils. You can see the pig right here down in the center, was covered in crushed, dried straw flour.
Right.
So every visible surface of the float has to be covered in organic material. And a lot of it is flowers, but a lot of it is other things.
Is that
What was that?
the rule for the rule?
The whole Rose Parade, that's the rule. Every organic surface has to be covered, or every surface has to be covered in something organic. After the parade, they do a couple of days where you can walk among the floats. And then after that, they're disassembled, which you can also sign up for, but I can tell you that from what I've heard, that's not nearly as much fun. They're disassembled and everything is composted. So that's good.
Just as an example, when we first arrived, or at least I was, were you also assigned for taking the dried flowers off the stems and kind of, mushing them? And then they put them in a blender, I guess, and then they blend them up and then you applied, you could see on the pig, that was the end result, but. So we got to see the beginnings, you saw the flowers, the dried flowers, and then you saw what ended up happening, and then you had the job of applying the, the kind of, the fine stuff after it was all blended up, whether it was rice or flowers or whatever, yeah.
What's the theme for this?
Oh, I don't know, do you know the theme?
Yes, and I've seen the float and I can't remember what it is. The float is, it's not very, the float this year is very tropical and it has a huge wisteria looking tree as part of it. The magic in, thank you.
That was my question, was whether we would be working on a cow also, or.
The cow actually was in the back of a pickup truck that the pig was driving and they had their surfboards and they were on their way to the beach. So I've gone twice now, and the floats have to be done by 8 AM on New Year's Eve day, because it takes them many, many hours to drive them to the parade start. In the past, the first time we went, we thought, okay, we want to be there at the end, we want to decorate, do the last touches. Don't do that, go a couple days earlier. Judy and I decorated on the 28th this year, and there was a lot to do. There was a lot going on. It was very active. So I would recommend getting there a couple days early and doing that, but they're signing up volunteers now. So if you're interested in going, I highly recommend getting signed up.
Will that be in the minutes?
Yes, of course it will. So you can go through the district. Judy and I signed up to volunteer through the district. Did you get your parade? You didn't get your parade tickets through district.
No.
So I shouldn't say this out loud, but inside tip, there are much more economical ways to do it than going with the district. Their package, Judy and I both looked at, were very surprised at how expensive it was to go with them this year. So if you want to do it on your own, you can still do all the fun activities. Let me know and I can, or Judy know, we can share the information about where we stayed and what we did and all that. But we decorated the float, went to the parade, and then my family also went to the Rose Bowl football game. So it's really an amazing experience and something I highly recommend for anybody who's at all interested.
Ben?
Yeah, ditto, it was a barrel of fun.
Thank you.
Kind of the same way for the Evergreen Rodeo Parade too.
Good
All organic.
Yeah.
Next, I just want to give a huge shout out to those of you who were part of the rodeo parade, who decorated the floats, who walked in the parade. We were a small but mighty group from what I heard. And I actually heard two people who contacted me, two neighbors who have been pestering for years to be Rotarians, who said, you guys look like you were having so much fun, they actually want to come to meetings and see what we're all about. So you did your job, well done. It was the beat, I'm sure of that. So thank you very much for everybody who was involved in that. Thought I saw David, did I not? No, I don't see him. So thank you, everybody. We greatly appreciate being represented in the parade this year. All right, Erica, you engineer up. Yep.
And in case you were wondering, I don't know if you saw Jamie's thank you. I was the one that should have been walking my boots. I had a huge blister, so I really gave it my all for Rotary. They are not good for walking. Anyway, this is Janine Payton from the Conifer Rotary. And we were co-chairs with Dave, who was, he's in California today, and I didn't realize it, but he was a huge help for this year's home show. And everybody else who helped us, who worked the door, who set up, tore down, thank you so much. I think we have PR. Oh, PR. Tim. He doesn't get it better.
Yeah, I understand, he's retired.
Yeah. But it's a huge undertaking and, we can't do it without all of our boat clubs, everybody helping. And Janine, I have to thank her because she is really the backbone of the home show. I think Jim Kreider and I talk about it a lot, that we should just put her on the payroll and run with it. So anyway, today we're.
Afford me.
I think that's Jay. So today, whatever we raise, we actually split it between Conifer and Evergreen, each year. So if it's at next year, it'll be at Conifer. We still split the money between the two clubs. So today we are here to present a check to our club. And when you see the amount, we have to say it's actually $300.43 more than the check. But anyway, so
Communication.
so it's $10,500.
Yes, so can we get a picture, without the computer now? I'll do it. That's okay.
So thank you guys for everything and we always look for vendors and people to help and hopefully we can keep this going. We'll talk about it, but it's always each year, like, do we have enough people to help us? So thank you again. Thanks Janine so much for all your work.
Thank you very much to everybody who was involved. That's a big undertaking and the community really appreciates it. And I certainly, we certainly appreciate the funds for programs. Couple quick announcements, changing of the guard. I finally got the date right on my slides.
Must not want to leave.
I almost submitted it, actually, I emailed it once with the wrong date and then realized I'd done it again, so I fixed it last night. District conference is October 11th. Just mark your calendar, save the date. It's gonna be in Littleton this year. We've got some great keynote speakers, some really exciting breakout sessions, so mark your calendar, plan on coming to that. And district wanted me to remind you about the online business directory. This is a free resource for you to be able to find other Rotarians who are owning, running, managing, etc., other businesses that you might be able to support. And they encourage you to list your business as well.
And it's only $5 a year.
Yep, and it's $5 a year to list your business, so. It's really a good way to get your name out there among other Rotarians. I can tell you the district conference actually found their caterer for the entire event by looking up restaurants and caterers on the district business directory. So that one event definitely paid for their $5 a year membership. All right, general announcements. I'll bring it to you, Kelly Staples.
Oh, I'm not gonna argue.
Okay.
Kelly Garrett, International Services Committee. First of all, I'd like to thank everybody who attended our get together potluck a couple weeks ago. It was an excellent event. We ended up with a extra hat and sunglasses. So whoever has sunglasses and hat that they're missing, please come see me. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, hopefully you all have seen my display out in the lobby here. And we are in full swing this year. We've got an event on the 12th, which is Conifer Fest. Where did you? Yeah, we're coming to Conifer Fest on the 12th. I need people who can drive a car. I need a driver. I need 4 drivers, or the same person to do it 4 times. We need to get the driver for the truck to the, from the truck, or we take the driver, once he's gotten to the event in the truck, back to the fire station, to fire station number 2 here. And then we also need a driver to get to the event and bring the driver from, well, I need drivers. I need somebody to get the driver to and from the truck.
Right.
When we bring the truck from the event to back to the fire station. So I need 4 drivers. So anyone can drive a car. I need one Friday night, the 11th of July. I need one on Saturday afternoon at 4. I need one on Friday, the 25th for elevation celebration. And I need one for Sunday, the 27th. So if you are open those days, please contact me. And all you have to do is drive. All you have to do is drive.
Good morning, my name is Kimra. I'm actually standing in for Diane Ganzauer. So I've heard that some of you have a problem. Bob, you have a problem, don't you? Scott, you have a problem, don't you? Yeah, it's July. You're thinking, oh, you know what? I've not spent enough time outside seeing the wondrous beauty of our area. And maybe I have some guests in town. Or I want to build a relationship with my neighbor or someone in Rotary. Well, we have a solution for you. This is the Rotary Hike with Mountain Area Land Trust. So I have some handouts here, and we're gonna do something different. I'm gonna pass them around rather than put them on the table. It seems as if table stuff sometimes gets lost. So you're gonna look at this and you're gonna, I'm gonna take a picture of this with my phone. And then I'm gonna put it in my calendar. And then when the sign up genius comes out, I'm gonna actually sign up and do this. It will change your life. It really will. For the better, not for the worse. There's a lot of people out there that are promising change. This is a change for good. So really reward Malt and their stewardship and Diane for leading this hike. It is, once again, it's on Tuesday. It's from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. You bring your sack lunch. It's not super strenuous. All the details are on this sheet. So thanks, everybody.
I'll send the sign up genius today.
And Erica's sending out the sign up genius. So once again, it's a call for action to solve your problems.
Wouldn't it be nice if that would really solve all your problems in basic?
I'm really done.
It'd be a step in the right direction. Okay. Chris, I hear you're introducing our guest.
Oh, yes.
You are up.
Okay. Morning, everyone. It's my pleasure again to reintroduce our club to the Executive Director of Resilience 1220, Lindsay Breslin. She was here a few weeks back and did a pause for the cause, if you recall. Lindsay joined our nonprofit in January of this year, and she's a licensed clinical social worker with a bachelor's degree in psychology from St. Lawrence University in what state? New York. You got it right last time, Ted. Let's see. And she has where'd we go here? A master's degree in social work from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Working in the nonprofit environment for 30 years, Lindsay has direct experience with suicide prevention, crisis response, and mental health services. When she's not working, she enjoys hiking with her husband and dog, Lily. Okay, this is interesting. You put your dog's name on here, but not your husband's. So he'll remain anonymous. Okay. And she also spends time with her adult daughters and other hobbies such as learning to play the ukulele and reading mysteries and thrillers. So please give a warm Rotary welcome to Lindsay Breslin.
Thank you. My husband's name is Ned, and we're about to celebrate our 35th wedding anniversary, so. He has a good idea. It's so nice to be with all of you again. As I was putting this presentation together, I was thinking I have so much to say. There's so much about, youth mental health and what's going on with our teens. So, but I'm really giving you some broad brushstrokes, and we'll talk a little bit about what we know is going on with our local youth as well. But if you can think back, it might be a little longer than for others and some, your adolescent years. What were your two main jobs? Your two main jobs were to hang out with your peers and start becoming independent, right? But the teen years, and now we know that puberty can start as young as 10 or 11, and they've extended adolescence to 24 for young women and 25 for young men. Is at that age is when our prefrontal cortex is fully formed. So adolescence is a very long period of time, and it's a tumultuous time. And one of the reasons is because that brain is under major construction during adolescence. So when I look at the brain very basically in three sections, we have here at the stem our reptilian brain, and this is what is keeping us breathing, our heart going, letting us know when we're hungry. We're not even aware of our reptilian brain. It just keeps us alive, and it's the fastest part of our brain. In the middle part is what's called our limbic system. And this is what controls our emotions and our memory, but it's a nonverbal part. And during adolescence, guess what's on high alert and moving pretty fast? That limbic system. So you have your 8 or 9-year-old who's pretty even keeled, who's awesome. Suddenly, you have this moody teenager who's angry one minute, laughing the next, and then bursting into tears. And that's because there's all these neurons are building and we're shedding neurons that we don't need. The prefrontal cortex, or the front brain, where all our decision making, our planning, our impulse control, all of those things, it's the slowest part of our brain. And adolescents are developing that. At 14, they have abstract thought. That's why they started disagreeing with you, right? They're trying to become independent. They're also forming their own ideas. And so they have abstract thinking and they have decision making, but if that limbic system and they're all fired up, guess what goes offline? That prefrontal cortex, right? So that's why teenagers are impulsive. It's why they don't always make great decisions, even though you've had a great conversation with them about making a good choice. And sometimes they'll follow through, and sometimes that limbic system overrides. So by 19, yes, your youth will be independent, but you might notice a shift at 24, 25, where they're really kind of doing well and making good decisions and planning all those skills because the brain's fully formed. So we want to remember that there's normalcy to, this tumultuous time. But what we want to keep an eye out for is when things are going a little rougher and maybe our youth or teens are not doing very well. So just to give you, this is a busy slide. The rest of my slides are not this busy. But I pulled the Healthy Kids Colorado survey. It's done every 2 years, so hopefully 2025 results should be out soon. But I pulled Region 17 because at Resilience 1220, we also serve, in addition to Evergreen and Conifer, we serve Clear Creek, Gilpin and Park, not Teller, but these stats included. And then I pulled for Jefferson County. So if you look at, it's pretty similar across these two regions. About, mid 30 some odd % of students felt sad or hopeless almost every day for 2 weeks or more in a row during the past 12 months that they stopped doing regular activities. That's a real sign of depression when they stop engaging in activities. 10% of students attempted suicide 1 or more times during the past 12 months. And this is high schoolers. Middle school just had state data, so this is just high schoolers. And 37.6% in similar Jefferson County students had a friend tell them they had thoughts of suicide at some point during the past 12 months. So kids know when their friends are in trouble. And this is why we want to keep conversations open as well. If a youth in your life is concerned about a friend, please try to get in touch with that youth or their parents. You know, you never know what's going on, but we don't want to, kids keep quiet. They protect their friends, but when we're talking about suicidality, we want to reach out. And then just shy of 50% in Region 17 and over 55% of students agreed or strongly agreed their stress level is manageable. What about that other 50%? Right? That's good news and bad news. But what is good news is the high level in both districts of students who felt they had an adult to go to for help. Right? And that could be a parent, it could be a teacher, it could be a coach, could be an aunt, uncle, could be the next, you know, your best friend's parents, right? But just to have that one supportive adult we know makes a difference in young people's lives. So I just wanted to give you a framing as to why resilience, we want to be this community resource with reducing barriers for youth to get the mental health support that they need. So if we really look at the statistics, and it's jumped a huge amount, that anxiety and depression has increased for US teens since 2010. A lot of people equate that with the coming of age of our smartphones, social media apps, the internet expanding, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Certainly is an issue, it's not the only issue, but we want to try to understand why. This is also a generation that has grown up differently, being with issues that they are dealing with, like climate change. These are students who have their live shooter drills on a regular basis in schools, right? They're growing up with a epidemic of mass shootings. We know also this generation during COVID was very cut off from their peers, which is their main job, to hang out with their peers. So there's multiple reasons why, and at Resilience 1220, I would say the two top reasons that students self-refer or their parents refer to us is anxiety and depression. There are other mental health struggles, but these are the two main ones. So if we look at some symptoms of depression, it's really, you know, it's normal to feel sad, right? Some days we just don't have good days, but if you have a teen or youth in your life that is really withdrawing from family and friends, they're not enjoying anything for a matter of time over a number of weeks. They don't want to engage. You want to look at change in sleep, sleeping too much. Now, teenagers need a lot of sleep, right? But people know their kids. Are they sleeping less? Are they having insomnia? Are they sleeping more or don't want to get out of bed? Are they overeating or are they undereating? Again, it's an either or, everyone's different. And just, you might see a drop in grades and they're maybe making some direct suicidal statements. Or they're saying, I just don't want to be here anymore. It would be okay if I don't wake up tomorrow. Right? There's a lot of things like that we want to address when people are making more passive suicide statements. And then self-harming behaviors are different. Self-harming behaviors are not suicide. Someone is not trying to take their life. They may cut, they might burn, they might bite, scratch themselves. It's really to take away emotional pain. That their emotional pain is so hard that that's a distraction by self-harming in some way. Or they want to feel some other pain instead of the emotional pain that they're saying. So it can be a distraction from that emotional pain. So if we start noticing any of these change in behaviors, we want to just check in and say, with curiosity, what's going on? I'm noticing, you stopped eating dinner the past 2 weeks. Something going on for you. Also, when we look at symptoms of anxiety, it's normal. Like, I'm a little anxious right now. My nervous system is up a little bit because I'm in front of all of you, right? That's normal. But when fears start getting a little out of control, that suddenly, your teen doesn't want to go to school anymore. They're extremely irritable. They're very self-conscious about themselves, sensitive to every criticism, maybe wanting to make sure, getting self, there's, they're wanting reassurance all the time, right? And then also, things show up physically with a lot of mental health, stomach aches, headaches. Mind, body, and heart are all connected. So often physical symptoms and, kids might report that their chests are, pounding. That's a sign of anxiety. They can't sleep. So we want to be mindful when they're having a lot of reoccurring worries that are kind of to an extreme extent. And sometimes kids may not verbalize it, but inside they're feeling a lot of anxiety, social anxiety, being around people, friends, groups feel like a nightmare. Going to school starts becoming stressful. And also, a new thing now is we see teens are struggling with eco-anxiety. So they are getting anxious about climate change. Hearing about, the various fires, the hurricanes, tornadoes, those kinds of things are weighing on kids' minds. So why? Why have we seen, I don't have all the answers, by the way. I have what some research is telling us and why teens are struggling with these mental health issues. But really, it's a mix. It's back to that nature nurture, right? So some kids may have or all of us may have a genetic predisposition to some mental health issues. And then it's kind of like, will that be activated or not, right? And that's really around the environmental, social, and cultural factors. So it's kind of a mix of both. A kid might be more prone to anxiety if anxiety runs in the family, or depression. And it's some of those environmental and societal cultural factors that might help trigger that. So if we look at some of those environmental factors, it's really, life is stressful to be a teenager. There may be family conflict going on. There's the pressure of academics, sports, other activities. A lot of bullying can go on. We're hearing a lot of bullying going on in the middle schools, a lot of kids struggling with that. Your first heartbreak, right? Starting to want to have romantic relationships that might not be reciprocated, or experiencing your first breakup. And then worrying about our looks, body image, how we look, are we, attractive enough? So teens in general worry about all these things, and those are amplified when they are experiencing depression, family conflict, bullying, that teens are already struggling internally as to who they are as they gain independence. And then if they're being bullied, that affects their self-esteem, and can lead to depression and anxiety. But there are additional environmental factors that, there's a book out that was put out 2023 called The Anxious Generation by a social psychologist. And he's talking about other additional environmental factors. So one of them is the overprotective parenting, which I think comes from a good place, because we don't want our children to feel emotional pain. We don't want them to experience bullying. We want them to have a good life. But if we're overprotective of them and we're managing everything for them, we are creating an anxious child, because we're saying we don't have confidence in you. I used to teach at the University of Denver, and I had someone in my class who worked in student services and said, a mother had called and said, would it be possible for student services to make sure that their son was up every day at 9 a.m. to make it to class? Right? I mean, that's some of the mentality, right? It's not having the confidence that their son could make it to class, but if he doesn't make it to class, that's a good lesson, isn't it, right? He has consequences, and he has to start learning how to become independent and do those things. We can't do everything. There's a lot of pressure to be high achievers, whether it's athletics, sports, community service, or for some kids, it's all of it. And we think our high achievers are doing well because they are achieving so much. But how are they managing that stress? Are we checking in with them? Because externally to the world, they may be saying, hey, I'm great, and I'm an honor student, and I'm on the top athlete. But what about that pressure? What is that doing to them? Some of our peer leaders held a team forum in February for Resilience 1220, and one of them stated that, she's a high achiever, she knows it. She feels guilty if she's not studying and hanging out with her friends. But what's her job? To hang out with friends as an adolescent, right? So we just want to check in, nothing wrong with being a high achiever, but are we checking in and looking at the stress? Because also there have been some instances where high achieving kids go off to some top schools. Guess what? They're with all the other high achievers. And suddenly they're not the top of their class, or they don't know how to manage all that stress of being with all the other high achievers. And some kids, then are really struggling with mental health and really struggle that first year of college, or may even drop out. So we just want to be aware of these things. There's no judgment here, but these are things that are going on. Also, our kids are overly scheduled. So in the anxious generation, two things feels there's a lack of real world play. A lot of kids are doing their play online through video games. They're not out in the streets playing or out in the mountains playing and getting, handling challenges on their skateboards, right? Maybe they're skateboarding online with their friends and doing the tricks instead of doing the tricks and falling and trying again and building confidence that way. It's a real difference between doing something online and doing it in the real world. And are they having enough time? I would say sometimes we even have trouble at Resilience 1220 scheduling therapy because the kids have so many other activities that they have to be doing. So just being mindful. And then this be happy culture. Are any of you happy all the time? Every day? Maybe some, but that's great. But were you your entire life? So everyone at Rotary is happy when they're here at the Rotary meetings. So we want to just make sure we want to normalize that a range of feelings is okay. All feelings are valid. And it's not, if I do this, then I'll be happy, right? There's different ways to have happiness, but we want to make sure, because what teens are doing is they're looking at the external world, and sometimes it doesn't match up with what they're feeling. So they're like, wow, everyone seems happier, but I'm depressed, or I'm struggling. What's wrong with me? Because everyone else seems happy. So we want to just make sure that we want to be happy, but it's okay if we're not. And if we don't, we wouldn't know joy if we didn't know sadness, right? We wouldn't know sadness if we didn't experience joy. So all the different range of emotions are valid and will be felt throughout a given day, all of the full range. So this is a generation raised on smartphones. And the internet and cell phones can be a wonderful tool. They're not all bad, right? But they have some limitations and how they're impacting our youth lives. So the pros are, it is a real way how youth connect now. They text with one another. They're in constant contact. It drives me nuts when my kids were younger and they were trying to arrange going over to someone's house. And it would take an hour. And I'm like, why don't you just call them? No, Mom, I'm gonna call them, So it's how they really connect in the real world, and build relationships. And as I said, they're gaming online, that's connection. And we know that connection is really important. That's a way they're hanging out with their peers. We just want to increase more in-person time with peers and without a device in front of them. But some concerns around cell phone use, again, goes back to that happiness culture, right? Everyone on social media is presenting their best selves, right? And so, oh, look at that person. They're much prettier than I am, or they're beautiful, or they're living their best life. Like, it's all about living my best life on social media. And so for youth, that's hitting them, like, well, internally, I don't feel that way. Or they have a Snapchat and everyone's at a party, guess who wasn't invited? Right, they're being exposed to things in real time, they're being exposed to climate change. They can look at the different wars happening right now in our world and get live streaming. Right, they're exposed to everything in real time that many of us, waited for the 6 o'clock news. And even then, it wasn't in real time. So they're exposed to that. There's cyberbullying going on that can happen that we don't know. Also, kids are stumbling upon or intentionally seeking out pornography. And that's where a majority of kids are getting their sex education. That, includes a lot of non-consensual acts and a lot of misogyny. But this is what, teens are learning, is saying, oh, is this what, people want? So we have to, it's very interesting, because we talked about the overprotective parenting, and this author of The Anxious Generation said, we're overprotective in the real world and we're underprotective in the virtual world. Right? We don't have the filters on. We don't know what our kids are really looking at online. So we wanna, and a study actually came out this week by the Journal of American Medicine, I believe. Association, anyway, JAMA, I can never remember what that stands for. However, a study was done that showed, so we're worried about kids with screen time. Kids spend an average of 4.5 hours a day on screens. What the difference, and related that to suicidal ideation. And what the study showed, it wasn't that much about screen time, was that the study was about addiction. Oh, do I turn this off? Oh, okay, that it's about addiction to the cell phone. So there's a difference to a kid spending a lot of time on screens, but they can put their phone down, put their computer down and go off and do something else. Addiction to cell phone was feeling they needed to spend more and more time and get more and more apps. And they felt extreme distress when they were away from their phone. So that's an indication of addiction to cell phone use, and that they found those kids that had more addictive tendencies to their cell phone after 4 years had higher suicide ideation. So we want to start limiting our use, screen time, put on those parental controls, check in what's happening online. But they're here to stay. So how can we use them in a balanced and boundaried way? So how can we help our youth? We want to check in regularly with curiosity. How was your day? How are you feeling? What's going on with your friends, or what's going on with this activity? Real curiosity, and validate their feelings. Sometimes kids will just kind of drop things in a conversation and see how you react, right? And what you really want to do is ask them how they feel about it. So if they're like, hey, so-and-so and so-and-so skipped school and went, and got high in the park and ride. And you feel like, so how do you feel about that? Hear what they're thinking, because they want to hear your opinion, but our tendency might be, I know for me as a parent, would be like, well, you better not be skipping school and smoking, so instead be like, how do you feel about that? They'll be like, well, yeah, it's a really important class they missed. We're getting ready for our final exam, right? Like, hear their opinion on it. And say, yeah, and I wonder if you were tempted, this is where when I'm talking about a cold versus hot discussion, this is a good time. So your child, or, says that these kids skipped school and got high in the park and ride. And you could say, how do you feel about that? And then you could also say, well, what if they invited you? What would you do? Right? You can have it say, I think, what would you do? So they're not in a overly emotional state at that moment. This is the opportune time. It's called a cold moment. Everyone's calm, you're just having a discussion. To start asking them that what they would do when there's a hot topic comes up, like your friend asked you to skip class too. Or maybe they're going to a party, you say, you know, I'd really prefer you don't drink, but what happens if someone offers you a drink at that party? Right, that's a whole discussion, instead of they're in the moment, you know, and your kid comes home drunk and you start giving them a lecture, you know, you're in a hot moment, you're not gonna get anywhere. Because guess what's offline? That prefrontal cortex. Right? So you wanna kind of have those cold versus hot discussions, have those hard discussions when they're having a cold moment. And whenever that might be with your youth. You want to point out those observations of changes in their behavior without any judgment. Just say, hey, this is what I'm noticing and I'm concerned. I'm noticing you've really withdrawn from your friends. You seem to not want to spend time with them anymore, and you barely spend time with us. What's going on? Ask if they're having suicidal thoughts. I think it's normal that there's a lot of fear around asking about suicidal thoughts because we might be scared of the answer. And there's also a myth that if you talk about suicide, you're making people more suicidal. Actually, the opposite is true. I spent 5 years on the Colorado Crisis Line, and I've spoken to literally hundreds of people struggling with suicidal ideation. And I would always scale. I'd say, so, you know, you're having suicidal thoughts? Yes. Okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, how often are you having these thoughts? 1 is, you know, every once in a while. 10 is I can't stop thinking about it every minute of every day. So we talk, and I go through my assessment and we talk through things. And as we came to the end of the call, if I didn't have to take further steps, I'd say, okay, at the beginning of our call, your suicidal ideation was an 8. Where is it now? 6, it's at 5 or 4, it's not there anymore. It all varied, right? It drops. Talking about it is a relief. And then if someone is having suicidal thoughts, I always assume someone has a plan. And that's a scary conversation, right? But so I would just take it as a given. I'd say, well, what ways have you thought of taking your life? And some people say, oh, I haven't. I'm just, you know, I just wish I wasn't here anymore, but I haven't thought further. Others, often I would, you know, talk about, I assumed people had more than one plan. Because people think of things and they rule things out. I did have one 19-year-old once, though. It was 2 o'clock in the morning. He was walking and really struggling, and we talked through, and I said, you know what ways have you thought of taking your life? And we talked about it. On his walk, and I said, well, what other ways have you thought of? And he said, well, we could brainstorm, but I don't think that would be a good idea. And I said, no, that would be a good idea. And I explained that often sometimes people think about more than one plan, and so I just normalized that. But again, you want to have it as a normal conversation, right? It's not a taboo topic because it's important because it reduces suicidal thoughts. And if things are more serious, then you know to take action and you put a plan in place. So it's okay to ask those questions. Encourage more unstructured time. Make sure you're not overly programming your kid or your grandchild. And as I've mentioned, that real world play, and we want to continue to foster that independence. Let them get that driver's license, encourage them. I've seen such a shift in kids not wanting to get their driver's license. I couldn't wait, right? I took my driver's test in a snowstorm, Buffalo, New York. I was so desperate to get my license. So, you know, and let them take risks. Yes, we want to balance risk and safety, right? We're going to say, I prefer you don't drink, but call me because I don't want you getting in a car with one of your friends who's drunk driving you home, right? Right? I prefer this, but if you drink or this happens, what's your safety plan? But kids need to go out and explore. They need to feel emotional pain. We can't take it away from them, right? Having that first breakup stinks, but emotional pain equals maturation because kids learn how to handle strong emotions, get through it, and they've learned something, and they now feel more self-efficacy and more control and how to manage challenges that come their way. And definitely seek professional help if you're worried about a youth. There's a lot out there. Resilience 1220, you know, is that resource here. We serve youth 12 to 20 years old free, 10 free counseling sessions. try to get people matched. If you fill out an intake form, we get back to you within 24 to 48 hours. They're then matched for the therapist, and that therapist is reaching out 24 hours. So you're not waiting on waiting lists. You're not waiting on insurance, getting a kid in there when they're ready. So I wanted to just personalize this a little bit more, and why I became a social worker out of two values that I hold. And one is that I think we all want to be heard at an emotional level, and that means that we all need to listen with empathy. And often we hear empathy as putting ourselves in someone else's shoes, and it's not putting someone else in someone else's shoes situationally, it's emotionally. We all know how it feels to be happy and sad and rejected and humiliated and joyous and exhilarated. So when someone shares something with you, you're trying to get in touch with that emotion. And I think that that's the most powerful thing we can do is listen to each other with empathy. And second, I feel it's a privilege to be with someone in their worst moments. And I like saying, yeah, I'm here to sit in the muck with you. However, becoming a social worker, I thought I was immune, that my kids would be just fine. I know all this stuff. Unfortunately, both my kids experienced childhood trauma. And certainly my husband, Ned, and I have regrets as parents and things that we missed. But what we're proud of is our response once we knew. And once we knew that they needed help, we sought out the best professional help we could. We check in with them on a regular basis. And we said, at least they're talking to one of us, we're doing okay. It was a rough patch, but we made it through. And I have two thriving young adult daughters, one who is a trauma therapist, by the way, the other one studying psychology and deciding next steps for herself. And do they still struggle? Of course. Do they have more coping skills? Yes. Do I still check in when I know they're not doing well if they're having suicidal thoughts? Yes. So for me, the professional is personal. And I'm telling you this because I want you to hear hope. I don't know if this has been a depressing presentation, but there's hope. Our kids get through these challenges. There's support out there. And I want you to know that one of those responses for us in our community is Resilience 1220. Because that's what's important. When a kid needs help and they say they're ready, you can reach out. So just for those of you who aren't familiar with Resilience 1220, as I mentioned, we were formed in 2019 and we offer free counseling ages 12 to 20. We also provide support groups and we do a lot of community outreach and we serve Evergreen, Conifer, Clear Creek, Gilpin, and Park. So since January 1st, we've already provided 711 individual therapy sessions. 153 different teens have taken advantage of our services so far this year, and 40 parent sessions with 18 individual parents. We offer 3 sessions for parents and also for teachers. And then we've already offered 31 support groups with 234 participants. Those aren't individual, they could be the same participants. We run monthly groups. We participated in the rodeo as well. We were the inside out characters from Inside Out. But if you want to stay involved, let everyone know about Resilience 1220. Anyone who has a child that might need support, you can refer youth in your lives, families. Many of you in here are generous donors, and thank you. We appreciate it. You can become a monthly donor. You can become involved with donor advised funds, give stock. Many of you attended our event here on May 7th, and then also we have our bistro event coming up at Evoke 1923 on October 7th. So mark your calendars. You want to have a fundraiser in your home, you'd like one of us to come and speak, we're happy to do that. And any ideas you have for programs, let us know. You know about the youth in your lives. For volunteering, we did pass around our clipboard. If anyone wants to sign up to be a volunteer. My colleague Cindy Lemke here is our Director of Communications and community engagement, and she runs our volunteer program and does a great job. So if you want to work with Cindy, she's wonderful to be with. I'm missing my slide, but we did move our office just at the beginning of the month. We're now in La Plaza Office Park, where there are the Adobe buildings off of Hilltop and Frontage Road for the middle building. We love our new space, and we'll be having, later in September, we'll be having an open house and ribbon cutting. So hopefully that you will all come and see our new space. So here's how to get in touch with me. Feel free to reach out. I believe we have a few minutes for questions.
I want to thank you because I think what you do is amazing. And I actually in college, I was an intern at a suicide hotline for the internet. But I was wondering, what do you do to connect with schools? And could schools do more?
Yes, so we have a good relationship with most of the schools in the areas, and every school is different about their level of engagement. But we have wonderful relationships with the school counselors and social emotional learning teachers. So for example, West Jefferson Middle School lets our counselors come into the school. You know, we know transportation is difficult, especially in the mountain towns. So they allow our therapists to come in and they coordinate schedules so that kids can have therapy there. We do an open art studio, you know, during lunch at Evergreen High School and Middle School. For those kids that lunch is a painful hour, because maybe they don't have a lot of friends, they can go do an activity. We do things in Clear Creek. So we have different relationships, and I think it depends school to school. Some of them say they've got it handled. We do have an MOU with Jefferson, Jefferson Department of Education, or the school district, excuse me. But it's up to each individual school, the level of involvement that they want, and they have it for different reasons. But we are active in all the schools. We're still building relationships in Park County, I would say, is our biggest challenge.
It's not what you. When you're looking for volunteers, what are you looking for? I know, but what are you asking is volunteers to do in your organization?
A majority of our volunteers, is it helping us with community outreach, really understanding what we do at Resilience, and we do a lot of tabling, back to school nights. We do a lot of the summer fairs. We're really asking people to be our outreach ambassadors to do that. If you have a certain interest and want to do something with youth, we can look at what that interest is and pairing you with one of our therapists, perhaps, helping run a support group or an art group, or you have a particular talent you want to do with the youth. We're open to those conversations based on your talents. And then helping us with our fundraisers. We always need a cadre of people, and how much those things, how work those things are. Thank you.
I have a comment and a question. Okay. I'm showing my ignorance because I didn't know for a long time what 12 or 20 meant. I don't know if you put something under there that I was like, what does that mean? So I think it's important to let people know that's. And my question is, my husband and I were at treatment level foster parents for 14 years, and mostly the teenage boys, really traumatized.
Yeah.
But one of our worst periods, one of our kids was suicidal. And we lived from upstairs at our level. It was every morning I'd gone by wondering if it was critical. And it was horrible, but you offer, and they did access to therapists and caseworkers, but you offer a group for parents, anything where, like, we would have had a support group of parents say. And I wanted to point out, I was really lucky because he was horribly bullied, and that's what caused it. And years later, the bully was at my daughter's driving class, and she said, "That's so and so," and I go, "Yes." I went out, I met him outside, and he was a really tall kid. And I got into his face and I said, "Are you so and so?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "My son almost killed himself. Don't ever do that to another child." I was so lucky that I had that moment that most parents don't get, because the kids are dead. But I went and got my son and I said, I saw so-and-so. I
Mhm.
said, do you want to go? Because asked me. He said, no, he asked me if I was gonna go back.
Yeah.
He said, no, I wanted to give. I was like, oh my God.
Wow.
I would have been pushing. But what do you offer for parents?
Yeah.
That's.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent question. So, the comment that she made is she wanted to know what the 12-20 was, and that's the ages that we serve. And yes, that's good feedback to maybe put that. I think it's in some of our literature, but yes, our logo is Resilience 12-20. And then she also asked about, she had a treatment foster children. That's wonderful work. Thank you for doing that. And one of the teens that her son that was in her home was being probably bullied and was very suicidal. And her question is, what do we do for adults? So currently, right now, we have a Beyond the Rape Go group, which once a month, which is for LGBTQ plus kids and allies and their parents have a separate support group at the same time. But I like that question because actually it was something I was talking to, when we were in the parade the other day, is offering like a parent maybe retreat or more of a support group. Because also when my daughter was in residential treatment, they had a weekend just for parents, because we're exhausted, we're in pain, right? As I think you're experiencing, and that was a wonderful support for us. So I think that's something that we do want to look at in our future programming. And so I appreciate the question. Yeah, and I just want to make one final point and we're out of time. Resilience 12-20 is not a crisis service, okay? So we're hoping to get kids before they reach that crisis point, or we're after that crisis, and we can help with that ongoing counseling. There's the Colorado Crisis Line, and then Jefferson Center for Mental Health down the hill in Lakewood has a 24/7 walk-in crisis center. So if we're all ages. So if you're ever worried and you're in a crisis moment, go there. And then resilience, we're more hopefully avoiding crisis or help for that ongoing. But thank you all for your time today, and I'm around if you have any further questions.
Thank you very much for your time, and Rotary is working to eradicate polio in the world. And as a thank you for being here today, we'll be donating 60 doses of polio vaccine in your meeting. So thank you very much. And with that, we are out of here. Go enjoy your weekend. Enjoy a wonderful, wonderful weekend. It's the first day of summer and celebrate. We're gonna have great weather. Thank you.
All right, so thank you. How are you? I guess Heather didn't make it. No. She told me, I told her about this, she said, well, 50-50 chance though. She's not a morning person either. Right. Like her mother. Oh, that's. Yes, she's. Yeah. Yeah, everybody says, hey, they have honey here. Well, she likes me. And she likes to be here. You don't realize it, because when they get up an hour, they can read it. I mean, they do their stuff. Well, that's true, yeah. So, if we get up, we can. Jump in. Yeah, we throw our. They got a look.
To go.
I did.
My son did it out. My library. My son did it out.
How are you?
Now, are you official? Are you married yet? No, no ring.
Married in July.
Okay, coming up.
Best. We do.